Won't this latest development drag the Philippines deeper into the brewing tension between US and China over Taiwan?
Yeah, and I'm going to go right to my answer. I'm going to say yes and no, right? This is the reality of geopolitics in the 21st century. So nothing is really black and white. We're talking really about 50 shades of risks and opportunities here for the Philippines. We're having our first 2+2 in 7 years, because for 6 years we had President Rodrigo Duterte, who tried his best to win over China. He gave so many concessions to China. He undermined the foundation of our alliance with the United States, or at least tried to. He did not assert our arbitration award. And yet, what did we get out of Duterte's diplomacy or engagement with China? Zero concessions in the West Philippine Sea. If anything, things got worse during his time. Under his watch, you had full militarization of the artificial islands of China. You had, of course, the Reed Bank incident, the Recto Bank incident. You had the Whitsun Reef. So now you have Marcos Jr. coming in and saying, okay, I want to be friends with China. I want to get the most out of our relationship with them, especially in terms of infrastructure, especially in terms of economic relationship. But I cannot also turn a blind eye to what's happening in the West Philippine Sea. Hey, he went to China in January. What did he get out of that? If you look at the very long joint statement that came out of Marcos Jr.'s visit to China, there was, again, zero concessions on the West Philippine Sea and not even a clarity on the status of real big-ticket infrastructure projects that China promised, not to Marcos Jr., but to Duterte back in 2016. So here we are, the Philippines doubling down on its alliance with the United States, hoping that now perhaps we are in a better position to get something out of our engagements with China, because before we had no leverage whatsoever. The reality is this: Duterte's engagement diplomacy did not work. ASEAN is not supporting us on the South China Sea. We got zero support from them on the arbitration award. And the Armed Forces of the Philippines is yet to develop minimum deterrence capability. So the 2+2 is about what can we get the most out of our alliance with the United States. But for Americans also, they want to get the most out of their new access to expanded EDCA and the new bases they're going to have access to in the Philippines in the coming year.
Right. Richard, let me just cut in right here. Are we protected, though, with this new agreement, this new mutual defense treaty again, and warming relationships with America, if, worst case scenario, China and Taiwan and the U.S. get it on? What are we supposed to do, and do we have some modicum of protection?
Yeah, this is my worry, right? So on one hand, in fairness to President Marcos Jr., he relocated, for instance, the Balikatan exercises from Ilocos Norte, so that was oriented more towards Taiwan. It's now in Zambales, especially because we're doing war games there, you know, like amphibious attacks, island defense, sinking a ship. Clearly, we know what this is all about, right? And then, of course, he also did not give Mavulis and Fuga, based on my understanding, to the Americans. And by the way, the 2+2 was also about negotiating how many American troops come in, what kind of access they're going to have, how provocative and aggressive our joint exercises will be. So those things are going to be negotiated. And yet, there are 4 additional bases open up to the Americans in addition to the 5 previous ones, so 9 in total. And out of 4 additional ones, 3 are in the north of the Philippines, Isabela and Cagayan, right? So this is where it slightly gets boring. Like, maybe this is a bit too provocative, but for me, it depends how we make the most out of it. Because remember, we also have interest in the Philippine Sea, in Benham Rise. So maybe we can make some of these EDCA bases that we're opening into the Americans also relevant to our interest in the Benham Rise or West Philippine Sea. But is there a guarantee that will be the case? I'm not sure about it, because after all, US is a superpower and we're not. So we have to make sure we stand our ground, we get the most out of this alliance, but not forego our strategic autonomy, and make sure we don't get too much involved in the Taiwan issue. But as I said, this is not about provoking China. This is about deterring China from invading Taiwan. If we have a strong alliance with the US, Japan, and other partners, then maybe China will think twice. But will that deterrence work? Again, there's no 100% assurance on that. So President Marcos Jr. has to be also honest about this. There is definitely risk here.
Well, Richard, talking about these new moves, is it clear to you now that we are choosing the United States over China? And speaking of making the most out of the deal, what exactly are we getting here from this arrangement?
Right. Let me go to the second part right away. So, for instance, 2 years ago, the Pentagon approved $2 billion in arms sales to the Philippines, F-16 fighters, potentially the upgraded one, F-16V, Harpoon missile systems. So I want to see development on that. Are the Americans going to give us those weapon systems? Is it going to be on favorable terms? Because, you know, maybe you want to get something in exchange for the expanded EDCA, right? So Marcos Jr. administration has to aggressively negotiate it. We have to get best out of this alliance. We have to really make sure this works for us. Now, the other, of course, things that we also have to keep in mind here is, we also have to make sure that we're not overly reliant on America and we get the most out of these trainings we have in our own minimum defense credible posture in the years to come. Sir, what was the other question again? Did I try to escape
I
the
mean,
answer?
is it the kind of signifying now that we are siding with the United States?
Yeah, so I just came from speaking engagement across the region, right? Including from Malaysia. I think there is a worry in some ASEAN countries that the Philippines may end up as America's deputy sheriff in ASEAN or this part of the world. At least that's the impression I get, including from talking to Grab drivers in Kuala Lumpur the other day, right? But I don't think that's what wants to happen. I think Marcos wants to have the cake and eat it too, or at least have some sort of balancing between US and China. But clearly, it's not going to be symmetrical. It's a highly asymmetrical balancing. Will it work? I don't know. My hope, though, and hope is not a policy, but my hope is China will see the situation and realize that it has to offer really something concrete to the Philippines, literally concrete. Otherwise, yes, maybe we're inevitably going to make a choice between US and China if current trends continue.